The thing about wisdom is that there's no app for it. No AI can teach you wisdom. You have to actually earn it over time. That's the beauty of it, right? Is that we keep learning these things and then we can look back at things. Like you said, the beliefs that you have, you're allowed to reject them.
Hi, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I'm so glad you are here today. Oh my God, I love my guest today. She is amazing. We are like two peas in the pod. Her name is Christy Pretzinger, and she is the founder and CEO of WG Content, which is a nationally recognized healthcare content consultancy. But her greatest accomplishment is the company's culture, which rests on four core values: empowered, curious, kind, and fun. We have so much fun talking about being a better leader. She has a program called the Better Leader Project. It's focused on self-awareness and better leadership, particular with Gen Zers. And she's just a total rock star. I absolutely love her. You are going to have so much fun in this interview. So hang tight and I will be right back with Christy. All right, everyone. I am back with my guest, Christy Pretzinger. Christy, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Carrie. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. So your company is called WG Content. You're the CEO and founder. Can you just tell us briefly what you do?
Yeah, actually, we are a content agency for healthcare and large hospital systems across the country. So we do content strategy as well as content creation, long form content, things for hospitals in terms of maybe physician bios, what to expect when you have a hip replacement or treatments and conditions and things like that.
That's fantastic. And how long have you been in business?
25 years. Yeah. Wow. That's a long time.
I'm about to celebrate my 19th year of leading Stone Age, the company that I run here. And it's like, how did 19 years go by? Oh my God.
Right? How does that happen?
Well, wonderful. So tell me a little bit about why you started the company and has it evolved since its inception?
I am not someone who set out to do what I ended up doing. I was a freelance writer prior to actually joining the company. Used to be called Writer Girl. And there was
Okay.
another person who had founded it. And it was pretty much a solopreneur kind of business. She ended up deciding to sell out to me when I was working with her. It was not a lot. The room wasn't anything to buy. It wasn't like there were ongoing clients or anything like that. I bought the name, which worked out pretty well. I was, like I said, a freelance writer myself. And I ended up through a series of events, discovering that I could bring teams of writers to large projects. And then I narrowed it down to teams of writers to large hospital projects. That happened probably in around 2007, I think, is when I narrowed everything down to that niche. And then from there on out, we stuck with that. And I was a French major in college. I had no idea. This was not in the cards for me. It just, luck is preparation meeting opportunity.
Oh, I know. Isn't that the way that it works? I never imagined myself to be running a company that makes industrial cleaning equipment, which is what I do, and taking this whole path on my love of leadership and the ownership mindset and employee ownership. So I completely agree. It's amazing how life just directs you in the way that you need to go, even though you didn't know you needed to go there.
Yes, exactly.
Now, one of the things that I really loved about your background is that you are a big believer in building your business based on a culture of kindness. I love this. I am the same way. So, can you talk a little bit about your philosophy of kindness in the workplace and how it manifests in what you do every day?
When I was starting out, when I started building this business, and it was really just me at the time, I said to my accountant at the time, if I can't build a business based on kindness, I'll go back to being a freelance writer. I really didn't know what the impetus for that was, other than the fact that I had worked places that I didn't feel like they were very kind. But it was funny, someone on a podcast once asked me, did you work for unkind people? And I was like, oh, that's a really good question. And I did not work for unkind people. But what I learned from that question and reflecting on it was that I worked in environments that didn't foster kindness. So the people were perfectly kind, but if there are systems and structures and processes set up that are unkind, it doesn't really work for the people. Once I realized that, I could look in hindsight and see why my business has been structured the way it is, why it has grown the way that it has. And all of that is on a foundation of kindness. Our other values are we're empowered, curious, kind, and fun. And so we have all of those tied in together.
It sounds like you are really intentional about your values, especially since you were so intentional about kindness being the foundation of your company. Can you tell us a little bit about if you set like a structure, an ecosystem, how is your company really built around those values?
We all know that there are companies that have their values on the wall somewhere and then they don't ever live them. And I've seen a lot of companies that have very verbose values, which might be great. They might tell a story, but it's hard to kind of live those out if you can't really succinctly capture them. And of course, as a writer, I think fewer words are better. Like Mark Twain said, I would have made it shorter if I had more time, because I think that it takes some real parsing and thinking and thoughtfulness to get to something that's really simple and boiled down and actionable. We kind of crowdsourced it with the whole company. It's been many years now, probably 15 years ago now. But what we do then with those is we actually structure work around those. We have a monthly all hands meeting. And prior to that meeting, we solicit nominations for people who have lived out or demonstrated a particular value. So, like someone will say that this month the value is this. And they will ask people to say, okay, who has demonstrated kindness? Who has demonstrated being empowered? Things like that. So we live that out. And then also in our monthly newsletter, I write a column called Christy's Corner. And frequently I write about our values and how they live out in the world and in the workplace. So we focus on making our values something that is constant, that flows throughout our organization, and that we can hang every decision on those values.
I appreciate that. We do something similar. We're an employee-owned company, an ESOP company, and our kind of ethos is around this idea of the own it mindset. And we were probably one of those companies that had 6 or 7 values that were on the wall. I think we did a pretty good job of living them, but we didn't create a system around it. So we revamped it probably around the same time. It probably wasn't 15 years ago. It was probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. We got really clear on what our values were, and it's practice self-leadership, be a great teammate, and deliver on the Stone Age Assurance promise, which is our promise to our customers. And so it's just super simple, clear: self, team, industry. We've built this whole system around Own It chats and Own It training. And it really becomes something that we live and that we breathe. In fact, just earlier today, we did our annual shareholders meeting, and Own It is part of everything, whether it's us talking about it as an executive management team, whether it's employees, whether it's our board of directors. And it really makes a huge difference when you are intentional about it and set a system up where it's not just words on a wall. It is reinforced every day in what you do. Of course, we have the employee ownership piece that goes with it, but anybody can set a culture of ownership if you're willing to do what it takes to create a space where people feel safe enough to truly own it.
Yeah, that's true.
So one of the other things that you are passionate about is helping Gen Zers figure out the workplace. Can you tell us a little bit about where this came from and some of the things that you're working on to make it easier for Gen Zers to integrate as they're starting off in their careers?
I don't really even know how it came about. I wrote a book, much like you did, called Your Cultural Balance Sheet. And then I do speaking around that and started thinking about how can we help people up their leadership game. So originally that was the first thing, thinking, well, maybe we should just go to our existing clients and start offering that. But then as I was working on it more and more, I started thinking, I don't even know why. I just kept seeing everything more and more about Gen Z people, Gen Z entering the workplace. They're, mid-20s, have been in the workplace for a year or two maybe. And the things that they are yearning for, the things that they explicitly say that they want, are all things that they really don't have the tools to actually do, because a large part of that comes from socialization. And most of these people are COVID kids, depending on where that hit for them. So they say that they want to be authentic in the workplace. They've seen their parents being told to leave that at the door. They don't like that. They want to bring their whole selves to the workplace. They are opting out of management, but not leadership, again, because they've seen people get chewed up and spit out in management, but they're still interested in leading. They very much want connection and community. They just don't have the tools to do it. So I developed something called the Better Leader Project, which is all designed about targeting that community. And right now I'm in a beta test, having recent college graduates go through what I've done and make sure to test it and make sure it's what they want before I just decide that's what they want. So I'll have them tell me if that's the case. But it's all built around the idea of small cohorts and staying in that small cohort for a period of time and practicing the self-awareness skills that lead to very effective leadership. So practicing vulnerability and empathy, things like that. We can all read about vulnerability or watch Brené Brown talk about it, but until you actually practice it and really are vulnerable and then get that reflected back to you, you don't know what that feels like, and you don't know how to take it anywhere. But then once you've practiced it in that safe space and really get your feel for it, you're better able to take that into the workplace and lead accordingly.
I love that. And I like how you are putting the focus on the Gen Zers trying to figure it out versus us Gen Xer managers, or maybe millennials, or even maybe some boomers who are still in the workforce trying to figure out how to manage Gen Zers. And of course, I think it takes everybody, right? I mean, every generation has faced this, but obviously Gen Zers have had COVID to deal with. That was one of the most disruptive events in our lifetimes. Are there only Gen Zers in the cohorts, or do you also have managers from other generations or potential leaders from other generations in the cohorts?
In the cohort right now, they are just the recent college grad because the kids that are seniors in college are way too busy, distracted, and don't participate. So we're doing it with the recent because by the time you start working in the workplace, you're like, oh, wow, I think I might need some more skills. The only beta test that I've done prior to this one was hospital people because we work with hospital marketing. And so we had marketing directors and one VP, I think, that was in there with us going through it. And they were obviously different ages. I think we did have a Gen Zer in that one. That was when I very first started it and wanted to just put somebody through it and see if they liked it, if they understood it, if they found it meaningful and helpful.
Do you think that this is one of the biggest challenges facing Gen Zers as they come into the workplace is really being empathetic, being willing to be vulnerable, like working on their communication skills? Is that you think the foundational issue that they're facing and maybe struggling when they're coming into the workplace?
I'm not sure if they're struggling with that or if they're struggling because they're not finding that in the workplace and that's what they want. I'm old enough to remember Oprah back in the day when she talked about authenticity all the time to the point where I felt like that word lost its meaning, but they're really bringing it back. And of course, they're too young to know that it was used up a long time ago, and so it's good to have it come back. Honestly, I can't answer that question. I'm not an expert on that, but I would guess that they are not seeing that in the workplace. And they probably also don't feel skilled, but
Yeah.
not a lot of workplaces offer that kind of vulnerability and empathy and leading with your feelings and all of that. That's just not viewed as the hard skills of business frequently.
Yeah, it's power skills though. I mean, let's face it, that's how we connect.
Yes, I mean, absolutely.
I really like that you brought up this idea of authenticity because I'm a huge believer in it. In fact, I just was sitting down with my finance team here. We have a long term employee who is leaving the company. He got a big promotion at another company. I'm super excited for him. We were having his goodbye lunch today. And we were talking about how, as we mature, it's easier for us to say the things that we maybe didn't feel comfortable saying. We just get more confident in ourselves and we feel safer and we care less about what other
Yeah,
people think. And one of the gals was like, sometimes I'm just not filtered. And I said, I think that there's this responsibility, though, that we have. Like, we do have to be authentic, but we also can't have no awareness of how we impact other people. And yes, you want to be loud and obnoxious and just say what you think. That might not be well received. And you could say, well, this is just who I am. But I think the more mature way to handle it is to say, I know that the way I show up impacts other people. So, how do I balance authenticity with responsibility for not spewing my baggage on people or overwhelming people with my energy? I really think that idea of authenticity with responsibility is so incredibly important. I wish that someone would have talked to me about that when I went into my first job, where I probably was like a bulldozer because
yeah.
I was so driven and wanted to be successful and wanted to prove myself that I didn't have that self-awareness of, okay, I'm being authentic, but I'm also probably rubbing people the wrong way because I don't have self-awareness around how I'm making others feel.
Yeah, 100% everything you said. I agree with that. In fact, we were just talking about this in our leadership team meeting today about managing through conflict because we're definitely a change management mode right now with just a lot of transition happening and realizing that if someone who's very enthusiastic and has lots of ideas and is asking a lot of questions of other people, what happens is other people who are maybe categorized as feelers, they feel attacked or criticized. Whereas the person who's the analyzer is asking all the questions like, I love this stuff. I'm curious. I want to do it. And neither one is recognizing that the other one doesn't have the same reaction. It's so important to have that self-awareness. I also think a lot of it comes from one of the things about getting older that's great is that you have discernment, which is
Mhm.
experience and judgment and
Yeah.
wisdom. In that way, I don't need to worry as much about the thing. Although, let's be clear, I blow it every day. I'm deeply human and deeply flawed. So I don't have this all figured out. But I don't make the same mistakes that I used to make when I was younger. I make new ones all the time. So there's that. But at least I keep failing forward and doing things a little bit differently and building on my own wisdom and discernment.
Is the goal really to be perfect? No. I mean, we're here to learn, and the only way you learn is by screwing up. It is the human way of doing things. It's uncomfortable when we screw up, and so therefore we avoid it. But I think we're supposed to.
I agree. And back to the perfection thing. In fact, the
Yep.
thing that I say all the time is better, not perfect for the Better Leader Project. Be a better leader, not perfect. And also, I've coined something called BQ, your better quotient, because we all have the capacity to become better. And I think in the world that, especially Gen Z is moving around a bit, we're all there in this social media world where everything is just curated and an image is presented. It's very easy for people to feel as though they don't measure up. And none of that is real. Getting back to face contact with people, really connecting with them. We are hardwired for community neurologically. So enabling that for people and then allowing the space for people to practice those skills of self-awareness, I think is hugely important. And to your point, you keep messing it up. It's better, not perfect. I can be better at this. I'm never going to be perfect at anything.
Agreed. I want to go back to what you brought up about discernment and wisdom, because I think that's something that's really important, especially as we're thinking about interacting with Gen Zers in the workplace. I have nephews who are Gen Zers. I have some employees who are Gen Zers, and I am actually just blown away at a lot of their self awareness. And they are certainly a lot more self aware than I was when I was in my early 20s. And I really appreciate about them. But having that self awareness means that they also have some very strongly held opinions. What I talk to my nephews about and what I talk to my employees about is there's a lot of ways to do things. And you're going to learn a lot over these next few years, these next few decades. And you're going to see that while I appreciate your strongly held beliefs, they're going to change as you grow and mature and experience life. Don't believe everything you think. You can have strong opinions, loosely held, and be willing to change your mind. And that is something that I do see with, especially my nephews, because I know them, is that they're pretty rigid in their belief systems. Of this is right. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're 20 years old. Like,
Yeah.
how do you know?
Right, right. I have a 24-year-old son and he's in law school. And fortunately, he always makes a joke like, I'm in law school, so I can tell you everything there is to know about the law, which of course, that's funny because he doesn't know anything. But I appreciate that probably because I've smacked it out of him over the many years of raising him. The thing about wisdom is that there's no app for it. No AI can teach you wisdom. You have to actually earn it over time. That's the beauty of it, right? Is that we keep learning these things and then we can look back at things. Like you said, the beliefs that you have, you're allowed to reject them. You might have held a long held belief. You look like you're like, I don't think that one's serving me anymore. And maybe it's worth letting that one go. I think part of that is just the maturing process, don't you?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm a big believer of trying things on and then deciding if this doesn't look good or this doesn't fit anymore, I'm not going to wear it. For example, I had aspirations of running for governor of Colorado. I put it out there. I even started to talk about building a team where, okay, in 10 years, I think I'll be ready to run for governor. And so I need to set things in motion. And then with all the political environment that's happening, and then just me changing my goals, going, you know what? I don't know if I want to work that hard for such little true impact that I will make because I am an impact driven person. I decided I don't want to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
someone said, gosh, that's like all you talked about for 5 years was how you're going to run for governor. And I said, I know, but it changed my mind. Like, it's just not where I'm at anymore.
Yeah.
But how many people stay stuck
Oh
in
my
what
gosh.
they're doing because they're like, well, I said I was going to do it. I committed to it. And then wind up not being happy in their careers because they weren't willing to try it on and say, nope, that doesn't fit anymore. I'm not going to wear that anymore.
This is just my own personal experience. That happened for me in marriage too. I felt like that I had made this commitment and that I had to stay, even though it was a really bad situation. I was miserable. It took me a long time and lots of counseling to figure that one out. But I think the whole idea of trying it on, and to your point, the impact, especially like my son's in DC and he used to always say he wants to run for office. I don't know if he still does or not, but I kept saying to him, why don't you just get really good at something and then you can be appointed and then you can really have an impact. If you're running for office, you are so indebted to so many people. It's hard to have the impact that I know he wants to have. Like you said, being an impact driven person and wanting to see the results of the effort that you put in.
I'm going to just file that one away. Maybe that one will be an outfit that I want to try on someday. Secretary of State Siggins.
Yeah, appointed. Apparently, anybody can do it nowadays, Kerry, so it shouldn't be a problem.
I mean, clearly. I am recently going through a divorce too. By the time this comes out, my divorce will be finalized. But I agree with you. And it is something that I really did stay with for too long, even though I wasn't happy. Part of it was out of loyalty, but part of it was out of how much is this going to disrupt my life? One of my board members was like, oh my God, I went through a divorce. Every CEO goes through a divorce. It's terrible for the company because they lose their focus. And so I was like scared. And that is not my experience at all because
Yeah.
I can manage my emotions at work and not let it impact me. I'm also the one who wanted it. So that makes it a little bit easier when you're not on the other side of things. But yeah, part of it was like this whole guilt around, is this going to affect me being a leader? I also, yes, I have my family and I have my relationship, but how is this going to impact my work? And that idea that somebody put in my head that simply was not true, because that is not how I was going to create that experience, made me stay longer than I probably should have.
I was listening to Brene Brown, who I love. She was on a podcast. I love the way she articulates things, and then I use them all the time. And this one, what you were talking about, and I did it too, staying in a marriage, regardless of what it was about fear. And she calls it being below the line. You're acting below the line as opposed to above the line. And that's a really good shortcut. We now use it on our leadership team because it so quickly captures that you're not at your best self
Yeah.
or below the line. When I was getting divorced, I was very fearful because I was afraid that my ex-husband was going to take half of my business because he was technically entitled to it, even though he couldn't tell you what I did. I was very below the line through that whole thing and very scared about that whole process, but that ended up okay. I know it's one of those things you stick around because your unknown is scary.
I like that above the line. Below the line, it fits in with the Enneagram, which I'm a huge believer in, and your level of health. The goal isn't that you have to change yourself. The goal is to understand yourself well enough to say, I'm being triggered or I'm falling into toxic patterns and I'm living in a low level of health. And I think that terminology above the line or below the line can simplify it even more of how do I make sure that I'm above the line as much as I possibly can, because I'm going to show up so much better as a leader. So
You know,
I really like that analogy.
I thought that was a good one too. I like the Enneagram. We use that too, and I love it. We type everybody that we hire. What I always said about it when I did a lot of studying and learned how to type people and things like that was the thing that I found so beneficial about the Enneagram was that it helped me loosen the strictures of my type. I still have the same characteristics and they're good and bad, but I can moderate them. Just because I'm a 7 and I'm curious about everything doesn't mean that I need to. Have you ever heard the expression about as a leader of seagulling all over people? As a leader, when you're seagulling, you are basically flying around and, pardon my language, you're pooping ideas all over people. And I have a big tendency to do that because I'm curious. I get interested in this and then this and then this. And then I can really, as a leader, drive people crazy with that. So I have to really moderate that and know when that is appropriate and when it's not. And that's all through the Enneagram.
Yeah, mine is drive to achieve. I have this clear focus on achieving and I can move really fast and I can handle a tremendous amount of work. And I had no idea that the vast majority of the population cannot work at my pace. I
Right.
don't feel like I'm working at a fast pace. Sometimes I'm like, I am too slow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody else is like, what the heck? And the Enneagram really helped me realize that the pace that I operate at is not sustainable for most people. And to have the expectations that they operate at my pace is unrealistic. And it was causing me frustration. It was causing them frustration. The Enneagram really gave me that lens to look through to be like, you just can't drive people that hard and that fast and expect them to not burn out and expect them to be happy or to like you.
I'm just the 7 that everybody has to be okay all the time.
Uh-huh.
Everyone has to be fine always. Everything has to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some of that tendency too. I've been working on that, like managing other people's emotions because I want everybody to be okay.
Yeah.
No, I am not responsible for managing everybody's emotions. I'm just responsible for managing mine.
Just keep your side of the street clean. You can't do anything about that side. Only this side.
Exactly. I love that you touched on this thread of curiosity. I'm a huge believer in curiosity. I think the smartest people are curious people. And I love asking questions. And I probably overwhelm people with my questions. That's why I have a podcast so that I can ask lots of questions and not have to drive everybody else crazy. But what does curiosity look like for you? And how has it helped you build your leadership style and your culture?
I don't know if you, I mean, I guess you can probably teach curiosity. I've always been innately curious. I'm an avid reader and was a horrible student, really didn't like school, but I'm a lifelong learner. I absolutely love learning all the time. It's ridiculous how many books I have stacked around here that I'm in the middle of. But for me, the curiosity, it's a natural tendency for me. And like you say you do a massive amount of work. I can consume a massive amount of content, books and blogs and newsletters and newspapers and all the things, and then can cite all that stuff. And boy, that can drive people crazy. On the other hand, in terms of my leadership, that curiosity has helped me to, as I step back and get wiser as I get older, to see that the curiosity allows me to connect disparate ideas because I'm aware of the disparate ideas. So I can bring them together into something completely different. And that has served me well. And also being curious, like with the Enneagram, right? Understanding that as a 7, I'm a head type. And knowing that, like, for example, my accountant, although she just retired, but all my accountants have been basically body types.
Yeah.
If I kept talking, I would never get to hear the valuable things she has to share with me because I'm too busy moving on to the next thing. Learning to how do I slow that down? And I was curious about, wow, other people, they think a lot before they talk. That's a novel idea. Might want to consider that one from time to time. But yeah, just understanding that and being curious about the different way that people process and think and have beliefs that might be different from mine.
I agree with everything you said, and I'm very similar. What I appreciate most about being curious is that it allows me to deeply connect with people. And one of the things that turns me off are people who are not curious. Now that I'm out exploring dating, it is absolutely a hard no if I start talking to somebody who has zero curiosity. And it does not mean being interested about me. That's not what I'm judging. I don't want to make it about me, but I have to be with somebody who's curious. I actually even started seeing this guy and he was literally not curious at all. Like I would leave a wide open opportunity to ask a question about lots of different things and he never took it. So I moved on and he asked me, he was like, "Hey, what happened?" And I said, "You have literally zero interest and zero curiosity. And that's not what I'm available for. I'm only available for people who are super curious and not just about me, but about the world around them." And, he's like, "I'm curious." I was like, "No,
You're,
I can promise you, you're not."
and you're not self-aware either because you're not curious and you think you are.
Exactly, exactly. And I was just blown away at the whole thing, but it's so important to me because of the connections that you can build so much faster when you ask good questions that get to the heart of the matter, whether it is about solving a problem or whether it's about just getting to know somebody. It just makes your relationship so much richer when you are curious and you ask deep introspective questions that get to the root of who we are or the problem we're trying to solve.
I'm like that too. I am really bad at cocktail conversation. I just go
Mhm.
straight for the jugular. I don't want to talk about the weather. I really don't want to talk about work in that particular sense, unless you're telling me about something that really excites you. Then I
Yeah.
like that because it lights you up and I'm curious about that. But just, oh yeah, I'm a director of marketing. And I just like, all right, that's a big fat yawn. You want people to, like you said, to get deep fast.
I'm with you. Well, I could talk to you all day, but I am curious a little bit more about your book. So tell us about your book and tell us about what you speak about to help us give some context around that.
The book is called Your Cultural Balance Sheet. And in a nutshell, the whole reason I wrote it, a friend of mine kept saying I should write a book, and I was just putting it off. And then I said something one day about I look at my balance sheet, of course, but I look at my company through the lens of a cultural balance sheet. So then he challenged me and said, "You have to write that book." So I did. It's really about taking that whole metaphor analogy and saying you've got assets, liabilities, and what's the equity. I found out in the process of writing it, this can happen on a financial balance sheet, but in a cultural balance sheet, your liabilities, if you focus on them, can actually move into the asset column. If you discover that rigidity is a liability for you, if you have the intention to change that and you pay attention to it, you can actually create flexibility and move that over into the asset column. I speak about that and talk about creating environments where people can thrive, which is my real passion. And I didn't discover that until I was 20 years into it. I was like, oh, that's what I actually like doing. The content work or whatever that stuff was is fine and it's good. But the best part for me is the leadership and really having the privilege to feed into the lives of the people that work with us. That's the best part of it. So I speak about the book, and then I also speak about BQ, which is your better quotient, and the capacity we all have to become better. And what does that look like? And how does it build on EQ? And what are steps we can take to constantly always access our BQ? Because we all have it, but a lot of people don't use it. Some people, like, they think they're fine where they are and they're not going to ever change or evolve or do anything different. And that's okay. But we all have the capacity to become better if we choose to.
Yes, we can. Oh, that's so beautiful. All right. Last question before I ask where people can find you. The name of this podcast is Reflect Forward. What does Reflect Forward mean to you?
I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier today, and I was thinking about what does reflect forward mean, especially because in my organization right now, we're looking at now through the end of the year. So what I'm calling that is protect the house. So it's not so much looking forward. It's like protect the house where we are right now. We've been through a lot of different things. So there's protect the house. And then the reflect forward is more about, okay, what is the next right thing that we can do? and what's the next right thing after that. And then really thinking about what is it, how do we do it, and when do we do it? And putting all of that together into a reflection. Obviously, reflecting forward is great because if you are sitting still, you're really kind of going backwards, right? So reflecting forward is a great way of putting your focus there. I like that a lot.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. All right. So how can people find you? How can people find your book?
You can just go to christypretzinger.com and you can find everything there. You can reach me. You can join the movement for the Better Leader Project. The book is available. You can get it on Amazon, but you can find a link there. And there's also information about speaking, and everything is there.
Wonderful. I will include all that in the show notes. Well, Christy, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you today. We are like kindred souls.
Yes.
We're so similar. It's crazy.
Very much. It's a pleasure. And I like you. So that must mean I like me too. Yay.
Yay. Exactly. Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, Kerry.
Absolutely. All right. Hang tight. I'll be right back. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I had so much fun. I had to make myself stop talking to her because we could have gone on forever and ever and ever. She's great. So please be sure to check out her book. Everything is in the show notes. And if you feel that someone could benefit from this episode with Christy, please feel free to share it with them. And if you like this podcast, share it with a friend, write a review, go on to YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to it. Thanks so much. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.